When the sun slipped behind the heavy gray clouds that afternoon, I felt something shift inside my chest, like a soft warning I could not name. I was standing in my small kitchen, letting the steam of the kettle rise slowly toward my face, breathing in the warm scent of tea, when my phone buzzed in my pocket and I saw my son's name glowing on the screen. He rarely called in the middle of a workday, so I answered with a little rush of worry, pressing the phone tight against my ear. His voice came through, low, intense, not angry, but weighed down by something I could not understand. He said he needed a favor, a small one, he said, though small had never sounded so heavy. He told me his in-laws were arriving in town for a short visit and asked if I could meet them instead of him because he had been caught up in urgent work and did not want them to feel unattended. He said he already arranged a hotel and all I had to do was welcome them and make them comfortable until he and his wife arrived. I did not question him. I never did. My son had built a life of pressure and deadlines, and I had learned to step into the gaps where his time ran thin. So I told him, yes, of course I can do that for you, my child, and he exhaled with a relief that almost stung me. He promised he would join us soon, and I nodded, even though he could not see me. After the call ended, the house felt oddly still, like something inside it had been paused. I packed my shawl and a warm sweater, slipped on my shoes, and locked the door behind me. The walk to the hotel was not long, and the wind carried a faint chill, but it was the kind that woke me up, made me feel present, made me feel useful. The city moved around me in waves, cars humming, feet hurrying, the sky thickening as if preparing to cry. When I reached the hotel lobby, its lights glowed soft and yellow, the kind of glow that made the shadows around it seem gentle. I stepped inside, and the warmth embraced me at once. The receptionist recognized my name as soon as I said it and pointed me toward the lounge area where the guests were waiting. I walked with a steady pace, pushing down the little nervous flutter in my chest, wondering what they would think of me. I saw them before they saw me, the mother and father of my daughter-in-law, sitting stiff on the edge of a sofa as if waiting for something final. The woman had her hands tightly folded, and the man kept looking toward the entrance doors, as though expecting someone else, someone younger, someone more official. Their faces looked carved with years of quiet disapproval. And the moment they noticed me, their eyes swept over me like judges, measuring worth. I approached with a warm smile, offering my hand and giving them a greeting drenched in respect. Their expressions softened only by the smallest degree, as if politeness required it and not their hearts. I asked them about their journey. I asked if they were tired. I asked if they were hungry. I offered them tea from the lounge, anything to ease their tension, but their replies were clipped short and cool, carrying a distance I could not cross. Still, I kept trying because mothers do not walk away from discomfort, especially when it belongs to their children. I guided them to the elevator, led them to their room, made sure the heater worked, made sure there were enough blankets, made sure the window closed properly because the wind that night was turning sharp. Their silence followed me like a shadow, thick and heavy, but I kept smiling, kept speaking gently, believing that kindness eventually finds a way inside even the coldest souls. When the room was settled, I offered to wait with them in the lounge until my son arrived. They exchanged glances that carried years of unspoken bitterness I could not understand. And the woman nodded, though with clear reluctance. So we returned downstairs, and the quiet between us felt like a wall slowly rising, brick by brick. I sat across from them, trying to fill the space with soft conversation, but every word I placed seemed to slide right off the surface of their silence. The mother asked me sudden questions about my son's upbringing, questions that felt less like curiosity and more like interrogation. Her tone held an edge, a blade hidden under silk. I answered with patience, describing his kindness, his loyalty, his hard-working nature, but she seemed to search for cracks where there were none, as if expecting me to confess to something undone, something lacking in the way I raised him. The father then spoke in a weary voice, saying that marriage was complicated, saying that his daughter often felt unheard, saying that life under pressure could crush even the strongest bonds. His words were calm, but there was something beneath them, a storm gathering in the distance. I listened carefully, trying to understand, trying to hear the meaning beneath the meaning. But before I could speak, the mother interrupted with a sharp breath, saying that their daughter had been calling them for weeks, whispering her worries through tears. My heart tightened slowly, not suddenly, not painfully, but in a way that made me feel my own age, my own fragility. They told me she had said things were falling apart, that my son had grown distant, that small arguments had turned into long silences, that their daughter feared she was becoming invisible in her own home. I felt each sentence land inside me like the slow drop of cold water until my shawl felt thin and my hands felt empty. I tried to explain that marriages go through seasons, some bright and some heavy. I told my son loved deeply, but carried burdens he rarely shared. I told them both young hearts sometimes need guidance, gentle hands around them, not judgment, but understanding. Yet the mother only looked at me with eyes that held something close to resentment, as if she blamed me for every crack forming in their daughter's world. The father then suddenly leaned back, rubbing his forehead, his voice trembling, as he said their daughter had called earlier that day, saying she was on the verge of asking for a separation, a word so heavy that it seemed to tilt the air around us. He said she felt trapped, unheard, misunderstood, and though my son had never been cruel, she felt lost beside him, as if their lives were running parallel without touching. I felt my breath slip away for a moment. It was as if the floor beneath me shifted, and I clutched my shawl to steady myself. My son had never told me any of this. He had sounded fine, even this morning when he called asking me to meet them. He had not trembled, he had not hesitated, he had not shown a single sign that his marriage was collapsing beneath his feet. 1 hour passed like that, with their confessions spilling in soft waves and my heart sinking deeper with each word. They did not shout, they did not accuse, but there was a kind of quiet desperation in their voices, as if they had been carrying this fear alone for too long, as if now that they finally had someone to speak to, the dam inside them could no longer hold. Then the mother stood abruptly, her eyes glistening, almost breaking, and she whispered that they were going to ask their daughter to leave the marriage, to free herself, to protect her peace. Her voice trembled as she said they could not watch her suffer in silence any longer, that love should not feel like drowning, that life was too short to live in quiet sorrow. And there I sat across from them, feeling the weight of their decision pressing against my chest until it ached. My son was not a cruel man. I knew that more deeply than I knew the lines of my own palms. But something had gone wrong, something he had not shared, something he had hidden behind his long hours and tired eyes. As they gathered their things to step outside for fresh air, I remained seated, frozen in that soft, warm lounge that suddenly felt colder than winter. I watched them walk toward the door,
Their shoulders slumped heavy with the burden they had decided to carry, and I realized with a sinking certainty that my son's life was about to be rewritten in a way none of us saw coming. And I sat there alone, with only the quiet hum of the hotel lights and a storm of questions swirling in my heart, wondering how a single hour could unravel an entire future, wondering what truth lay buried beneath the silent spaces between husband and wife, wondering why my son had sent me instead of facing them, wondering what pain he had kept hidden, even from me. The outside world darkened as if mirroring the ache gathering inside me, and I felt the air shift, a soft whisper, a warning of the beginning of something that would change everything.
The moment they stepped outside, leaving the lounge behind, something inside me loosened and then tightened again, like a thread pulled too hard. I sat there, feeling the echo of their footsteps fade until the silence wrapped itself around me like a blanket woven from worry. The lights above flickered softly, casting warm halos on the floor, but none of that warmth reached my chest, for my mind had already begun its long, aching journey through memories and questions that refused to stay quiet. I thought of my son as a child, a boy who ran into my arms with dust on his knees and sunlight in his hair, a boy who cried openly when hurt and laughed without fear, a boy who once believed I could fix anything with my hands or with my words. I remembered how tightly he used to hold my fingers when crossing the road, how he used to whisper his dreams to me before falling asleep, dreams of a world where he would build something that mattered, where he would protect the people he loved, where he would never let sadness stay in our home longer than a moment. But children grow like rivers, their paths widening, shifting, carving new landscapes without asking permission. And somewhere along the line, he had built walls around himself, walls made of responsibility and pressure and unspoken fears. I knew he had grown quieter with the years, but I did not know quiet could become so thick that even his wife could not see through it. I sat there thinking of her too, my daughter-in-law, a gentle soul who entered our family with shy smiles and hopeful eyes. She had once told me she felt safe with my son, that his steadiness brought her comfort, that his calmness grounded her. I remembered the way she used to blush at simple compliments, how her hands trembled during her wedding rituals, how she held my son's arm as if she had finally found a home in him. But somewhere between then and now, something fragile must have cracked, something small at first, then larger, something that grew unchecked until it became too heavy for her to carry alone, and she must have whispered her fears to her parents over late-night calls, her voice trembling into the darkness, while my son probably sat in another room, shoulders slumped under the weight of his own storms, unable to see hers. As I waited for him, the minutes crawled like slow-moving shadows, and the air began to thicken with the sound of my own heartbeat. I pulled my shawl closer, breathing in the faint smell of winter that drifted in each time the lobby door opened and closed. I wanted to call him, but something held me back. Perhaps fear, perhaps the need to hear the truth from him face to face. Perhaps the quiet hope that he would walk through those doors soon with the same innocence he carried as a child, ready to share everything with his mother. When the elevator chimed, I looked up instinctively, but it was only a group of strangers laughing their way to the lounge, their happiness brushing past me like a breeze that reminded me of a world still moving forward while I sat suspended between past and future. I wanted to stand, walk outside, find the in-laws, speak to them again, explain that marriages do not break in a single hour, but that they also do not crumble without reason. But I stayed seated because it was not my place to defend or decide.
This was their daughter's pain, and my son's choices woven into a knot too tight for my hands to untangle. Another 20 minutes passed, then 30. The sky outside grew darker, the wind grew louder, the hotel lights grew brighter, and my thoughts grew heavier. The receptionist gave me a polite smile from the counter, perhaps noticing the tension in my posture, the way I kept glancing toward the door as if expecting a storm to walk in wearing the face of my son. When my phone finally buzzed again, I felt my heart jump. I answered quickly, my voice trembling. His voice came through low, strained, the way people speak when they are carrying something sharp inside their chest. He told me he was on his way, but his tone told me something else, something quiet and breaking. I asked him if everything was all right, and he paused, a pause long enough to feel like a confession, before he said, "Yes, I am fine, just stuck in traffic." But mothers know the tremor in their children even when the world cannot hear it. I wanted to press him, ask him why he sent me instead of coming himself, ask him why he sounded like a man standing at the edge of something he did not know how to escape. But I did not want to spill his pain before he was ready to name it himself. So I only told him to drive safely and that I would be waiting. When the call ended, I stood from the sofa because sitting felt impossible now. The walls felt too close, the silence too thick. So I walked toward the window, letting the glow of the streetlights spill across my face, watching people come and go, each one carrying stories none of us could see. I wondered if any of them were walking through heartbreak masked behind ordinary expressions, if any of them carried untold sadness in their pockets, the way my son seemed to carry his now. The door of the hotel opened again, letting in a gust of wind that brushed against my shawl, lifting it for a moment. And it was then that I saw the in-laws returning, the father walking slowly, the mother wiping her eyes with the edge of her sleeve. Their shoulders looked heavier now, shaped by a decision that no parent wished to make. They did not notice me at first, but when they did, their expressions softened not with warmth, but with the tired resignation of people who had reached the end of hope. The mother came toward me, her steps small but determined. She stopped a few feet away, and her voice came out as a whisper, saying their daughter had finally answered her phone, and she was crying, saying she wanted to go home, meaning her parents' home, saying she could not breathe in that house anymore, saying her heart felt bruised from too much silence and too many misunderstandings. My chest tightened again, and I asked quietly if my son had hurt her, if he had spoken harshly, treated her poorly, acted with cruelty. But the mother shook her head quickly, saying, no, he had never raised his voice, never raised his hand, never shown anger, but sometimes pain is not delivered by hands or words. Sometimes it arrives through distance, through absence, through the quiet neglect of someone who has drifted so far into their own world that they forget someone else is walking beside them, feeling the emptiness expand between every step. The father stepped closer then, placing a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder, and he told me softly that their daughter felt alone even when my son was near, that she felt invisible when he worked late, that she felt unwanted when he spoke little, that she felt forgotten when he slept through mornings and rushed through evenings. I listened to every word, each one falling like slow rain against the surface of my heart, soaking deeper with every drop. I wanted to defend my son, to say he was trying, he was drowning in work, he was exhausted, he was doing his best. But the truth is, effort unseen is almost the same as effort never given if the person you love cannot feel it. I realized then that love needs presence, not just intention. Love needs voice, not just silent care. Love needs attention, not assumptions that the other person already knows. We stood there in the quiet corridor, three parents tangled in a mess made by two hearts too young, too overwhelmed, too quiet to ask for help. The mother leaned back against the wall as if her legs could no longer hold her,
And she whispered that they would stay for the night, but in the morning they would take their daughter with them until the storm settled, until the fear passed, until she could breathe again. I wanted to reach out, hold her hand, tell her I understood, tell her I wished things were different, tell her I wished my son had opened his heart sooner. But grief has a way of sealing the mouth, leaving only silence behind. So I only nodded, letting the weight of their decision settle somewhere deep inside me. Just then, the entrance doors opened again, and this time it was him, my son, walking in with tired eyes and shoulders bent beneath an invisible weight. He saw us from across the lobby and stopped for a heartbeat, the kind of stop that says, "I already know something has gone wrong." Then he walked toward us slowly, like a man approaching the wreckage of something he once treasured. The mother crossed her arms, the father straightened his posture, and I stood between all of them, feeling like the bridge between two worlds that were about to collide. The moment my son reached us, his eyes flickered to me, questioning, searching, almost pleading, and I felt something inside me break because I knew he was not heartless. He was merely lost inside the noise of his own life, lost inside expectations he never learned to share, lost inside the silence he mistook for strength. And in that moment, in the soft, dim glow of the hotel lights, I saw something shift, not in the air, but in the future, a future that suddenly felt uncertain, fragile, suspended on the edge of a sentence none of us were ready to finish.
When my son stood there, silent in the glow of the hotel lights, the world around us seemed to fall away until nothing remained but the trembling space between a husband and a truth he could no longer outrun. His breath shivered in his chest, and though he said nothing, every line on his face carried the weight of unspoken stories, the kind that broods quietly beneath the skin. The in-laws waited, their sorrow wrapped tightly around their shoulders like winter cloaks, and I stood in the middle of them all, feeling as if time itself had paused to witness the breaking of something precious. My son finally opened his eyes, and the moment he did, I saw it. The exhaustion, the fear, the guilt, the longing, every tangled thread pulling him in different directions at once. He looked at the mother, then the father, and then at me. And for a moment, he was not a grown man anymore. He was the same boy who once ran to me after scraping his knee. The same boy who cried because he had broken his toy. The same boy who asked me once if love ever disappeared or if it only hid until someone found it again. He took a slow step forward and his voice came out low and almost fragile as he asked them why their daughter had not spoken to him, why she had kept her pain hidden, why she had gone to them instead of trying to reach him. His voice did not carry anger, only confusion and a quiet heartbreak, as if he was realizing for the first time that love could slip away even while he was still holding it. The mother answered softly, saying their daughter had tried again and again, but every time she found him either buried in work or lost in the numb silence he wore like armor. She said her daughter felt like her words always landed in a part of him that had no room left for anything except exhaustion and duty and the constant pressure of surviving. The father stepped closer too, saying that a woman does not leave because she stops loving. A woman leaves when she has been silent for too long, when her chest is full of trapped words, when she becomes a ghost in her own home. My son lowered his head then, his shoulders sinking as though someone had placed 1,000 invisible stones upon them, and I wished I could walk up to him, hold his face in my hands, and remind him of every gentle thing he had ever been. But this was not the moment for a mother's comfort. This was the moment for truth. And truth is often colder than winter breath. He looked at them again and whispered that he never meant to hurt her, not even for a moment. He said work had become a storm he could not control, deadlines chasing him from morning to night, pressure building like a wave that kept rising and rising. He said he thought he was protecting her by carrying everything alone, but he did not notice that his silence was becoming heavier than the burdens he tried to shield her from. The mother listened, her eyes softening with sympathy, though grief still lingered on her lids. She told him gently that love does not ask for perfection, it asks for presence. That love does not need someone to move mountains, it only needs someone willing to sit beside you when the world feels too heavy. She said their daughter was drowning in loneliness, even while he slept beside her each night, and that loneliness is a kind of heartbreak that leaves no marks but shatters the spirit all the same. My son's hands trembled slightly, and he pressed them together as if trying to keep himself from falling apart in front of us. He whispered that he never meant to hurt her, not even for a moment. He said work had become a storm he could not control, deadlines chasing him from morning to night, pressure building like a wave that kept rising and rising. He said he thought he was protecting her by carrying everything alone, but he did not notice that his silence was becoming heavier than the burdens he tried to shield her from. The mother listened, her eyes softening with sympathy, though grief still lingered on her lids. She told him gently that love does not ask for perfection, it asks for presence. That love does not need someone to move mountains, it only needs someone willing to sit beside you when the world feels too heavy. She said their daughter was drowning in loneliness even while he slept beside her each night, and that loneliness is a kind of heartbreak that leaves no marks but shatters the spirit all the same. My son's hands trembled slightly, and he pressed them together as if trying to keep himself from falling apart in front of us. He whispered that he wished he had told her sooner, louder, clearer. He wished he had seen her eyes properly instead of just glimpsing them in passing. He wished he had held her even on the nights when he was too tired to speak. He wished he had not mistaken her silence for strength. He wished he had understood that silence can also be a cry for help. The father stepped forward, placing a hand on my son's shoulder, and for the first time since that evening began, there was no judgment in his gesture. Only the gentle compassion of a man who had lived long enough to understand how easily life can pull people apart. He told my son that their daughter still loved him, but she needed space to breathe, space to rebuild herself, space to remember who she was before the shadows settled inside her chest. My son nodded slowly, and when he lifted his face, there was a single tear resting on the edge of his lower lash, ready to fall. He blinked away and drew in a long breath, the kind someone takes before walking into a storm. He asked if he could see her, talk to her, tell her he was sorry, explained that his silence had never been rejection, only exhaustion. They hesitated, looking at each other, exchanging a silent conversation shaped by years of protecting their child. Then the mother said she would call her and ask if she was willing to speak to him. The mother stepped aside with her phone and dialed, and each second stretched longer than the last. My son watched her with eyes full of something fragile, hope or fear or both. When the call connected, we heard a faint voice on the other end, trembling, raw, the voice of a woman standing on the edge between leaving and wanting to be held. The mother spoke softly, asking if she would talk to her husband for a few minutes. My son stood perfectly still, barely breathing. The daughter-in-law did not respond at first. Then a soft yes slipped through the speaker, a yes filled with hesitation and longing and pain. The mother handed the phone to my son and stepped away. And the moment he took it into his hands, I felt the air around him shift like the room itself was holding its breath. He greeted her in a voice so gentle it broke something inside me, and I could hear the faint sound of her breathing, thin and uneven. He apologized then, not with grand words, but with the trembling honesty of someone who finally understood how much his silence had cost her. He told her he loved her, but he had forgotten how to show it. He told her he had buried himself in work thinking he was protecting their future, but instead he had lost sight of the present. He told her he missed her even while lying beside her, but he did not know how to say it because his mind felt like a battlefield he could not escape. She listened quietly, then her voice cracked as she said she felt alone so long she forgot what together felt like. She said she stopped speaking because every time she did, he looked too tired and she did not want to add to the weight he already carried. She said she loved him too, But love was not enough if she kept breaking in silence. She needed time to find her breath again, to remember her worth, to heal the parts of herself she had sacrificed while waiting for him to notice her fading light. My son closed his eyes as her words flowed through him like a slow, painful river. He whispered that he understood, that he would give her space if that's what she needed, that he would not pull her back or hold her down, but he asked her gently to let him try again when she was ready, not for the sake of what they used to be, but for the sake of what they could become if they rebuilt with open hearts. There was a long pause, a pause so fragile I felt as if the world might crack if anyone moved. Then she said she did not know what the future held, but she would not close the door completely. She says she would spend a few weeks at her parents' home and think and breathe and heal. And when she felt steady again, they would meet and decide together whether love still had space to grow. My son swallowed hard and said he would wait. She whispered a faint goodbye, and he whispered one back. And when the call ended, the silence felt like the soft exhale after a storm. Not peace, not resolution, but the beginning of something new, something uncertain, something fragile. The mother returned to him, the father stood quietly beside her, and I walked toward my son, wanting to hold him but stopping just before touching him. He looked at me then with eyes full of quiet sorrow, and I placed my hand gently on his arm, not to comfort him, but to remind him that he was not alone, not now, not ever. We walked out of the hotel together, the night air cool against our skin, the streets illuminated with lights that blurred around our steps. The in-laws walked ahead, their figures moving slowly, and my son walked beside me, heavy but breathing, perhaps for the first time in months. The sky above us stretched wide and dark as if echoing the uncertain future waiting for all of us. When we reached the parking lot, he finally spoke softly, saying that he never realized how loud his silence had become. He said he did not know how to fix everything, but he wanted to learn. He wanted to change. He wanted to become the man she believed he was on the day she married him. I looked at him then, truly looked at him, and saw not a broken man, but a man standing in the rubble of his mistakes, ready to rebuild with trembling hands. I told him gently that love does not disappear, it only needs tending, like a flame that dims in the wind but glows again when someone shields it with their palms. He nodded as if holding on to every word, and when he hugged me, something in—
If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every single subscription motivates me to bring you even more exciting and dramatic HOA stories. And don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. I'll see you in the next story, where justice gets even more satisfying.